My name is Tom Scrivner. My wife Ronda and I wanted to do something special for one of our daughters who passed away 8 years ago. And we thought that making rosaries in the university colors for Catholic Campus Ministries and Newman Centers would be a very nice way to honor her. And so we started making rosaries a little over 4 years ago. To date, we have made, the two of us, 41,400 rosaries. That's over 2.4 million beads. As you see, we inventory about 300,000 beads all the time. And we're very dedicated to making the rosaries for the universities and Catholic Campus Ministries. We buy all of our supplies from Our Lady Rosary Makers in Louisville, Kentucky. And they are simple. They're fast. It takes us about 5.5 minutes to make one rosary complete. They're inexpensive. They cost about 13 cents each. And we think they're very pretty. So I would like for you to see our process, and maybe that will help you make rosaries. God bless you. The first thing is buying or ordering your supplies, your materials, beads, crucifix, cord, and I have a sample of what we use. One of the things that's very important is Minwax polyurethane in a clear gloss. This substitutes for needles. I know that's hard to imagine right now, but I'll show you in a few minutes. Our beads, we like to use these food trays that we buy at Walmart that have 3 compartments. And it serves very well to put your beads in, the primary color, the secondary color, and the separators. And then our crucifix, they are plastic. I like to use the rounded head because if you tie a knot on top of them, the knot holds in the center better than a pointed crucifix. Our materials that we use are nylon twine. It's bonded, and we use only white and black because most of our rosaries we can do in that. The first step in our process, and you see here that I have coil of the twine, and I measure it off. It's on a pin, so I measured off at 34 inches in length. And then I can simply spool it off as I go, and I count the number. Typically, I do 34, 34, and 32. That gives me 100. Cut it right in the center on both sides. And we have the cord that we use for making the rosaries. Now this is a twisted cord, so it could fray. The second step of this process, and one that I think is very important, is we take the polyurethane and we simply dip the ends of this cord in the polyurethane about 2 or 3 inches. And as we pull it out, I then hang this up, the twine up, and let it dry overnight. It will dry very hard and very rigid and serve as a needle. Once I have finished that, I take the twine and simply in the end that is not coated, I tie a simple overhand knot, and that prevents the beads from sliding off the end. Now, the cords need to, after they are tipped, they need to be hung up and dried overnight. Then they are actually ready to put beads on. This is my wife, Ronda, and she is actually the beader for the rosaries. She lays her cords across her lap, and she always lays the tipped end on the right-hand side and the knotted end on the left-hand side. It's easier for her, being right-handed, to place them. Now she typically picks up one bead at a time. No, she picks up multiple beads at a time. to bead on the rosary. Now she's adding her Our Father, the separator, and she's going to the white bead. The most mistakes start in the first decade, the third decade, or the fifth decade. The fifth is obviously very easy to correct. And when you get to the fifth decade, she also measures it. She doubles it in half and measures to make sure that the decades are all the same, and that will eliminate any mistakes that she may have made. It's easy to remove, if you make a mistake on the first decade, it's easy to remove the knot at the first decade and add or subtract a bead, whichever you might need. Years ago when we started, I actually started making rosaries, and a friend of mine, his wife had passed away, and she was a rosary maker, and I knew, being the head of pediatrics at Texas Tech Medical School, he probably wasn't going to make rosaries. And so I asked him if he would allow me to have those materials and make rosaries to take his wife's place, and he was delighted. So I started making rosaries, and a while later my wife asked if I needed any help. And I said, certainly, I would like that. And she now tells everyone that she became labor and I became management. But we all, both of us, have an important part to play in this process. The ordering of materials and the setup, the beginning, and then the final process is mine. She does the most important part, which is beading, the primary part of the rosary. And we are very thankful that we have had this calling from our Lord. It takes my wife about a little over 3 minutes to bead one rosary. Yes, we talked about that. We had a daughter that passed away about 8 years ago, and we do this in her memory, and as we bead the rosary, we often pray the rosary in her name, and we feel very close to our daughter. Now she has finished a complete rosary. She's doubling it to check to make sure the numbers are correct on it. When Rhonda finishes the rosary, she places them in a cardboard box with the tails that do not have the knot on them sticking out so that they don't, the beads don't fall off. I simply come over and pick up the rosaries that she has beaded and take them over to my table where I can put the tail on the rosary and finish it. Rhonda's beads that she has finished the rosaries, I simply lay them down and pick up the end that is not knotted, and I tie a simple overhand knot as close to the bead as I possibly can. I double the rosary and tie a third knot as close to the two ends as possible. The tail is next. And the last but not least is the crucifix. I turn it 4 times and then put the cord back through to complete the knot. Pull it snug, clip off the ends close to the knot, and basically the rosary is finished. However, there are 2 knots that need to have something to hold them together, and I put 1 drop of super glue on each of those 2 knots. Here are 4 of our rosaries that we have finished the beading process. However, as you notice, there are 2 knots, one just above the crucifix and one where the 2 ends of the cord come together. And these can come undone unless they are glued. So I take the rosaries that Rhonda has finished, and as you will see, There are 2 knots, and I simply lay them on plastic. Works very well, and I laid so that the rosary is upside down. The back of it is facing me, and I put a drop of glue on each of these knots. There are 2 on each rosary. 1, there's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Put 1 on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, and the 4th rosary. It's always important to wipe off the tip of the super glue, and I use Loctite Super Glue Professional Liquid. This is really good stuff, and it keeps a long time. I take the 4 rosaries that I have just glued, wipe off the plastic so that it stays, and then these can be hung up and dried overnight. Once they have dried overnight, they are finished and ready to be shipped to the universities or used by whomever.